Welcome, everybody. A warm and heart-filled welcome to all to our Gaia journey. My name is Antoinette, and I'm here in New York. And I welcome all of you, whether it's morning time, evening time, very, very late evening time, wherever you may be. Welcome to our session of the Gaia journey, our second inhale session. We just had the first of the 14-hour day that we have together, with over 1,000 people joining both in Zoom rooms and in our live stream that's happening at GaiaJourney.org. So in the Zoom rooms, we have four different rooms with about 150 to 250 people in each room, in order to have our small breakout sessions and still be able to talk to each other in an interactive way rather than kind of a one to many situation. So, welcome, welcome. And in the Zoom rooms, you can just say hello, share your name and where you're coming from in the chat. It's really lovely to see our global community coming together. So, while this may be the second inhale version and this may be your first time here, we are welcoming everyone, whether you've been here before or not, because we need all of us. We need all of us here together. We need all of us to be connected in this way and to be making sense of what's going on in this time of disruption. So, welcome to you. Welcome if you've been here before, and if you've brought a friend, or to any of you who may be here now. So, I will share a little bit about our journey together over the 14 weeks, and also just to say that today is an inhale moment. So, I will pull up um, our little journey here for you to see and um, get a sense of this being the inhale week. So it's technically week 3 of the 14-week journey that we're on. Um, and in this experience, this is where we come together as a global community and share learnings across um, things that we may have seen as boundaries before. Now we're able to really share across using both technology, but also a kind of inner space of connection. So we're connecting here through Zoom and through all types of mediums. This journey is a 14-week inhale and exhale. The inhale doesn't just happen on its own. So the inhale is where we come together as a global community. The exhale is where we move into a kind of our own personal practice and into our own context and communities. That can look a lot of different ways. Some people join their social solidarity circles, which was a great joy to see many of you sharing with hashtag Gaia Journey. We got to see some of the stories and the deep experiences that were coming out of these social solidarity circles. And in the session that we just had with Vandana Shiva, she shared with us that it's really not appropriate to be calling it social distancing, and that we really are merely physically distant from each other right now, and that when we use something like a social solidarity circle, we can really maintain the relational connection. So the blue thread that kind of moves through shows the inhale, exhale, and the movement from the world that we may see as collapsing into what we are creating together. And for many of us, there may be a desire to act. So I'll show you some of the survey results in our sense making experience that our wonderful research team has been pulling together. Um, but the kind of desire to act, you can see here that um, we are in that first stage of the journey now. So we're at April 10th, and we're in the staying with experience. And we may have that desire to act, and we also have this need to stay with. So really knowing that our actions are coming from the place of what is needed now and what we sense as the emerging future. And not just from the place of the old, which Otto will go into quite a bit more. But as we are in this staying with journey, we're just going to begin to enter in this coming week. We'll begin to enter into the deep resonance practice. And we'll be sharing more of these resources to be able to do that, like social presencing theater and eventually vertical prototyping, to support your journey. So that's a little bit about that. Um, and this is just the inhale and exhale that we're experiencing that I spoke about earlier. So, a little bit of our survey results. As I began to mention, many of us are feeling this sense of what someone called sad joy. And many of us may be feeling that deep sense of grief, anger, frustration, sadness. And we may also feel a sense of joy in being in connection with each other in this way, or a new sense of possibility. So, the next piece is that in our current context, we're seeing all is connected and a lot is broken. Again, holding that deep contradiction within ourselves and within our global community. And someone said they're seeing that the impossible is suddenly possible. And so, something that we never thought before could happen, that we would stop everything in this way, that we would see this kind of, you know, as Otto has described it, the hitting the wall. We never thought that we would stop in this way. And yet here we are. So the impossible is now possible in a whole new way. And then finally, understanding our impulse. What is our impulse now? What is it that we're moving towards? And again, this is recognizing maybe some are saying now is really a time for stillness and deep listening. And as a global community, we're also saying change is urgently needed and we need to stop talking and to take action. So all of that is living with us. It's living in us as individuals, it's living in us as a collective. And the inhale and the exhale of the Gaia journey is meant to support and hold us as we go through this together. Otto, over to you.
Thank you, Antoinette, and a warm welcome from the Boston area, from where I'm linking to you. And it's really interesting, Antoinette, what the research team, the patterns that they saw in the first survey results. We'll have more, we'll learn more. But this holding contradictions is probably something that we all experienced before, and that's just so much more heightened kind of in this current moment. So on an emotional level, sadness and joy, in terms of our context, all is connected, a lot is broken, and also that things can change either way. More dictatorships, which is one thing that we see going on, but also more co-creativity, more kind of more and more stronger democracies, breaking down of walls, strengthening of connections, which is also something that we see going on. And if you zoom out a little bit or double click on that and say, well, so how, if that's like our current moment, so where is that current moment embedded, right? And if I just go to my own experience, kind of the past 2 years, I would say I have had an increasing number of conversations with people in, companies, medium or larger companies, in government, running some of the bureaucracies there, international organizations, movement makers on a grassroots level. And basically what they all share is, some of the same feelings, right? That probably most people, many people at least on Earth share today. And that can be summarized with the following 3 sentences. 1, our civilization is hitting the wall. So the way we currently organize our things is not sustainable. And therefore, this process of hitting the wall, which is the process of systemic breakdown and collapse, has already started and is going to continue. 2, I want to be part of something different, a different story of the future. And 3, I don't know how. So if you take those 3 things together, I think they they point us to a direction where we are in a situation that, from a systems perspective, can be described like this. We collectively create results that almost no one wants. The shocking loss of biodiversity, the climate change, challenges that are not only coming our way, that are already here, all the social upheaval and fragmentation and polarization we see going on, and so on and so forth, the shocking degrees of inequality. All of that is something that individually, right, almost no one really wants, yet collectively we create. So I want to share a little image around that, because that, description or characteristic really has to do how we organize our systems, and that's what systems thinking is focusing on. So what you see here, you have seen many times, kind of like an iceberg model with symptoms at the top and the deeper root issues, below the waterline. So applying it to the current situation, today we have like 1.6 million cases, almost 100,000 deaths. And a lot of the current response is really on this first level here, which is the reacting, right? We're building up ICU capacities in the hospitals, and the lockdown, basically locking everything down, the entire society, the cultural and economic life. But we know that this is just kind of the first step. We also, most importantly, need to address these deeper issues, which has to do with building these capacities, for testing, tracing, isolating, in a more focused way of distancing. We have to, on the paradigms of thought, really shift our awareness or shift our mindset and mental model from one that's based on separation to one that is based on interconnectedness. And that's actually what we all see going on. I mean, learning about how my own behavior impacts the whole, right, impacts these outcomes, is either flattening or not flattening the curve, is exactly kind of what we experience together. And then on the deepest level, really shifting the inner place from that we operate, from an ecosystem awareness that is just organized around the me, to an ecosystem awareness that is organized around the well-being of all and the whole. And the first time I became aware of how important this deeper level here is for the outcomes that we create was when I had this conversation with the late CEO of Hanover Insurance, Bill O'Brien, who summarized his many years of leading transformational change in his own organizations with this sentence: the success of an intervention depends on the interior condition of the intervener. So the success of what we do as change makers depends on the inner place from that we operate. What is that inner place? It's kind of what we started to talk about 2 weeks ago in the first inhale, kind of with a profound process of opening, right? Opening of the mind, of the heart, of the will, and tapping into our resources of curiosity, compassion, and courage. But we also talked about that if you face disruption in your own life, that's really something hard to do. It's hard to do because, what happens in disruption often is that we are thrown into, if we don't really have developed these capacities here, what happens is we are moving into a freeze reaction. And a freeze reaction is really protecting ourselves. And that leads to closing the mind, closing the heart, closing the will, and thereby to amplification of behaviors that are driven by ignorance, hate, and fear. So when we talk about the tensions, the conflicts that we hold, that's another dimension, right? It's almost like a meta dimension of that conflict. And where are we? We are right in between. Because what's showing up in social fields is both of these dynamics. What inspires me, right? So that's kind of the stuff down here. That's kind of the dynamics we deal with down here. What inspires me in the current situation is to see how we collectively, as a global community, over the past 3-4 weeks, have been able to put our mind on one challenge that we face, right? To really kind of put our collective attention onto this issue. And in most of communities, to really flatten that curve. How did we do that? And to mobilize massive resources, around what's necessary now. And shifting our mindset, right, from one where how I connect to people on the other side of the planet, how I connect to other people in my community, was based on a mindset of separation to one that's becoming more aware of the real interconnectedness. And where we begin to see, movements into this direction, where together we begin to operate from an awareness of the whole, an ecosystem awareness, if you want. So if we are able to do this, to flatten the curve, which is actually what we do collectively right now, how does that work? It works by integrating all these 4 levels. And that's something that I think is such an interesting phenomenon that we can do that locally, but also we can do that globally. And I described that in the blog that I posted this week, and I a little bit because I think it's such an inspiring and also important development that is worth noticing. And my friend and colleague Kelvy Bird, created an image for that is, shared also in the post, which is that, so how do we do that? So to integrate all these 4 levels by bending the beam of our observation, of our attention back onto ourselves, back onto our own behavior and how that is impacting others, both as an individual, but also on a collective level. So bending the beam of individual and collective attention back onto ourselves as a leverage point, to really integrating all of these 4 levels and beginning to see new patterns of co-creativity. And in fact, the whole GAIA journey, how, we come together here, right? So as a journey of many thousands and co-create this social field of possibility. And the more than 100 people who are in the core team holding all that, that's an amazing example of that. But it's not the only example. It happens in many places right now. And that's what I wanted to draw our attention to also. Antoinette.
Thank you, Otto, for sharing this moment of inspiration around what's actually possible in our humanness, to be able to bend the beam of observation back on ourselves as individuals, as a collective. In order to do that, we'll do a short practice of stillness. So the invitation here is to just connect in with what is going on in the body, and really use the body as a way to ground into this moment. So we'll start there and move with the body and the breath and see what arises. So if you would like to or able to get both feet on the ground, if that can be a grounding place for you, and just sensing into the breath, perhaps closing your eyes or lowering your gaze. That's comfortable for you. Tuning the attention to the breath. And as you begin to notice the breath, does the breath begin to deepen in the lungs? Turning the energy to the front of the body, the softness at the front of the body. And also turning the attention and awareness to the back of the body, the strength that is at our back. And with that front and back, also noticing the center, the through line that runs vertically. So connecting down to the feet and the roots of the earth. And then also connecting through the heart to others in this current moment who may be here with us on this screen, on this conversation, the close to 900 or so. Just connecting with those hearts who are here in this community, the 1,000 or so that were with us just an hour and a half ago and are part of our global community, and those who will be in the next 3 sessions, connecting to all of those heartbeats and extending that out to all those who may be affected by this current crisis on our globe, and connecting that heart energy to all beings. And from that place, extending the awareness and attention up to the place just above the crown of the head, where there's just a little bit of sky, and connecting to the expanse that lives above us and the roots that live beneath us. Staying attuned with your energy for just a few more moments. You can return the energy and attention back to the screen in front of you and to this community, and I'll hand it back over to Otto to introduce our guests today.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. It's really a great pleasure and honor for me to introduce Dana Cunningham. Dana is a good friend. She's a co-founder of the Presencing Institute. She also is the co-founder of the community and the director of the Community Innovators Lab, MIT Co-Lab, that has played a very important role in, linking what's happened here on campus at MIT with the challenges that really matter. Dana is an attorney by training, has worked in the area of civil rights for many years, and has been a teacher for me in really what it means to not only talk about, but really embody and experience and perform what I made mention of before, which is the bending of the beam of the tension back onto ourselves. So Dana, thank you for joining us for this session, and I would like to kick it off with maybe the same way we started the conversation with Wandana earlier today, which is, so Would you maybe share with us a little bit about a moment or two in your life, maybe a little turning point, or where something happened to you that began to shift your own way, how you see yourself, and the kind of work you want to be in service of, or you want to pursue going forward. A moment of waking up. What was that in your own journey, and what brings you into this line of work?
So first, I just want to say hi to everybody. It's wonderful to see all of the chat notes from all over the world. It's just very powerful in this moment to see so much connection online. So just thank you all for all the chats that are coming across. So I guess the moment, just to mention, I guess I'll pick the moment from Berlin. And if, those of you who are on this Gaia journey and have been part of other presencing pieces may know the Berlin journey, because a number of us were involved in it, but it remains one of the most sort of formative moments of my life, and feels relevant right now for a lot of reasons. So we were in Berlin at a masterclass, a presencing masterclass, and there was a dynamic in the room among the Europeans and also among the Jewish Americans, that those of us who were not part of either of those communities were not fully attuned to. And ultimately, the conversation, the thickness of the air in the room, the sense of something wanting to emerge, broke through. And we had this opening of discussion and heart about, historic trauma and tragedy and how it lands personally in humans, and how humans, how history lands within our bodies. For me, it was particularly personal because the night before, I'd been in a conversation with friends about anti-Semitism, Berlin, and racism, anti-Black racism in the US. And in the course of it, a very, very dear friend of mine began explaining her experience as a German. And about how hard it was to absorb the history of the war in Germany as a German. And I lashed out at her and really allowed my personal pain and anger to hurt this person that I deeply loved. And I was pretty happy with myself, actually, in the moment, because I felt I had scored one for the team, whatever that might have meant. But through this opening in the room the next day, it suddenly occurred to me what I had done. And this physical feeling of my chest constricting and then almost my bones opening. In that moment, seeing my friend across the room in this opening within the room, just one of the most powerful experiences that I've ever had. And it actually really changed my life. And I noticed in all kinds of different ways, relationships shifting after that because of this. My heart literally was had cracked open. And I remember seeing Otto soon after that happened. And, I said, I had this really strange feeling in my body. This is really, and he said, point to where that feeling was. And I pointed to my chest and he said, that's your heart, actually. That's your heart. But it was, my children said, what happened to you? What did you do over there? You're different now that you're back. So for me, this feeling of trauma landing in the body seems really relevant right now.
So Dana, before we move on, so what was it? Can you describe the moment? So what was it that you saw? The seeing was?
Yeah. It was a room of, I don't know, maybe 75, 100 people. And in that moment, there was only one other face, only one other person in the room. And she was way across the room, and there was a thickness and a quietness. There was a hum, and there was just her across the room. And it was as if there was a physical lifeline between my heart and hers. That it was just a lifeline, and it was physical. It was not. It did not feel at all in my head. Yeah.
So you were going on and sharing how that relates to the current situation.
Yeah, and so after when we got let out of school for the COVID virus, I'm saying let out of school. It felt in the beginning like it was a vacation. I was thinking about my whole family's back here in the house, and we could spend a lot of time together, and a break from work. It felt just commuting from my bedroom to my study that wouldn't be such a bad thing for a couple of weeks. And so my girlfriends and I organized a Zoom call twice a week just to check in and to see how we were all doing with managing family relationships and all that kind of stuff. And in the beginning, a lot of gossip, a lot of talking about cooking, a lot of talking about, getting along with family members and roommates. And that was the first week. And in the second week, we started talking about people we knew who were getting sick and then dying. And at the end of the second week, in our second check-in, there was this pause in our conversation, and it was, what is happening to Black people? This was before there was any data. There were no announcements. It was just, how could we, 4 people on this call, know so many people who were sick and dying? And then we had work calls. Every morning we have a digital tea time on the job. And so we all call in and share stories. And that was last week. Last week, people on the call started talking about kids, a 19-year-old, a 22-year-old dying, and how many people within our immediate circle were sick and dying. And one of my colleagues said, I know there are so many people who I love who have people they love who are dying. And so for me, this sense of how structural violence, how the violence of society, how the inattention to human need and human suffering lands in the body has been very, very profound for me over the last 2 weeks. This sense of this, I believe that structural violence is actually a series of human agreements, that we will not pay attention to a set of humans that aren't somehow as human as we are. I've for years have been using the term social distance, and it's meant something very different to me. It has meant this sense of the word isn't ostracization. What is the word? The word is marginalization and holding at arm's length, this sense of estrangement. That's the word I'm looking for. Estrangement that I've often felt that I encounter when I'm engaging with white people. It's not racism exactly. It's just a sense that maybe I'm so different that I'm not human in the way they are. And for me, that was my understanding and my use of the idea of social distance. And so this new use of social distance is really, for me, kind of a mind twist, because on the one hand, it is a gesture of caring. It is an act of mutual responsibility. And on the other hand, for me, whenever I hear it, I also think about the social distance that is racialized in this country and that is resulting in all of the profound suffering in African-American and other minority communities. So for me in this moment, I don't know if anyone in this conversation knows of the Adrienne Maree Brown piece written recently, Rushing Towards the Apocalypse. Just a fantastic piece. If you don't know it, rush to Google it and read it right away. And Adrienne Brown talks about this balance between grief and wonder and fear and vision. And for me, that is how it feels we need to be in the world at this moment. So I want to just say a few more things, and then I'm really eager to hear from all, you all in the room. So first, I want to say the Community Innovators Lab, CoLab, does a ton of work in the Bronx. It's where we've been working the longest, the Bronx, New York. And it is the world epicenter of the COVID crisis right now. It has more deaths in that one part of New York City than whole countries do. And it is where we were hearing all the stories of so much loss and so much pain. And so every day for me, there is a feeling, a direct encounter with that suffering. And today I was on the phone with Pablo Alvarado, who is the head of the National Day Laborers Organizing Network. And he was talking about his members are farm workers, agricultural workers. They are the people who come in, the humans who come in to clean the supermarket after we've all left. And they are the people at the cash registers. They are the home workers taking care of the people who are sick with COVID. And, they're invisible and we don't hear their stories, and they're just the mechanism by which we have cleaner supermarkets and food on the shelves of those supermarkets. And he was saying that it's not just that they are going to work sick. They're going to work sick because, and many of them are undocumented. It is also that the abuse that they suffer regularly is being intensified now because it can be. And so just holding in our hearts all of that suffering is just, to me, it has to be a daily practice, not to make us, not to immobilize us, but just in the spirit of expanding that lifeline from one heart to another. remembering, you know, when I sit down to the beautiful meals that my husband and my son are cooking every night, that somebody in danger got that food to me on the table. And that's another kind of act of caring. So I want to end with this. I was in the supermarket this morning at 7 a.m. and my heart both broke for all of the workers in the supermarket who didn't have on protective gear. I mean, some did, a lot didn't, who were walking around on their day jobs, being extraordinarily helpful, connecting, looking you in the eye when you asked for something through the face mask, volunteering to help in ways that were completely unnecessary. And as I pulled up to the checkout counter with my 2 large shopping carts full of food for all of the people who are currently eating in my house, the cashier, she had on protective gear. I was really glad to see that. She said, "I'm so happy to see you. I hope you've had a great day and just relax. I'm going to take care of you." She was dressed all in purple and she had on like sparkly things all over, like sparkly earrings and a sparkly headband and a matching purple face mask. And I think her hair was dyed purple. And as she was taking the stuff out of my cart, she was dancing. And she was telling people, "I am so busy," because I had a lot of food and I just love being so busy. And, you know, I'll let you know when it's time to come help this woman to her car. And she was laughing with her colleagues. And so when, you know, I've decided as a practice that when I leave the supermarket, I've got to give the frontline hero a token of appreciation, money, you know, to just to support them in a way that I can, that is possible in this momentary transaction. And so when I got all the stuff in the carts, I pulled out the cash and I handed it to her, and she said, "Absolutely not." She said, "I'm doing this because I'm here for you. I'm not going to take your money." And I thought, who is this human being? Who is this human being? Every day coming in contact with so much risk and danger, and meeting it with joy and service. So that is the lesson that I have learned today. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dana. Your story so much resonates. It makes me aware of that the physical distancing that many of us practice actually is a privilege that is only possible because others are in the front line, putting themselves at risk every day. And your supermarket story has so many embodiments. It's applicable for all of the healthcare workers.
Right.
So the heartbreaking stories that we hear, particularly from New York, where the healthcare workers who put themselves really their lives at risk at the front line, they know they're going to contract the virus, and they do that with such an open heart and compassion for others. And then at the end of the day, the interviewer asks, "Do you have health insurance yourself?" No. And it turned out that many of them cannot even live. They cannot only not afford healthcare insurance, but also cannot, provide a living wage from that job. They have to run 2 other jobs to just, deal with some of the basics, which still are very insufficient. So that's how we organize our economy, right? The
Right.
ones who do the most important work, the most essential work around food, around healthcare, and so on, that's the one we pay the least. How is that possible? And I love, Dana, I never heard that before, right? Your definition of structural violence is a series, structural violence is a series of individual arrangements. So it's a whole number of very small things that each of us do, every single day. And just, I think kind of that's, with your story, you really helped us to bend our beam of not individual, but also collective attention into these blind spots. But these are blind spots. And so it's that kind of racism, right? It's not like, the old style of racism. It's just kind of to not care, to not pay attention to what is actually happening in the, as a result of the collective arrangements that we enact collectively. So thank you for that. I have nothing to add, and I would have many questions. We will save them for when we come back from the reflection moment, and also from the moment of stillness that where Tony will lead us into a musical, using kind of improvisation to really reflect on the current moment that you shared with us, and that you opened really for us. And so we'll have a little bit of journaling, a little bit of sitting with that moment, and also sitting with the question, what does that really mean for me? We'll have breakout groups, and after that, we will continue the conversation with you, and everyone will have the possibility to share observations and questions with you. Over to Antoinette.
Thank you, Dana. Quite a powerful story, many powerful stories you shared with us there, Dana. And for right now, sitting with the feelings that might be coming up for us, it may be helpful to grab a pen and paper and begin to just jot down what you are sitting with now in this moment, how any of this may apply to you. And again, this is not a moment where we jump to action. I think that often we are, oh, this is what we can do to solve it. And here in this moment is actually sitting with, how does this apply to me
Mhm.
and my experience? So to do that, hopefully you've got a piece of paper and pen or pencil. And maybe just jotting down first what feelings come up for you now about what is happening in our world. Where do you feel it in your body? And as Dana shared her kind of process for us, and also this thinking around what causes structural violence and the agreements that we may be consciously or unconsciously upholding, just noticing where that lives for you, where is a place where we consciously or unconsciously uphold the agreements, these agreements in our society. And they might be small things that we uphold without knowing it, that we could apply more attention to now. And Dana shared with us a practice of holding the suffering in our hearts. Perhaps that's your practice. Perhaps there's another practice that you use. But just sitting with that for a moment. And it's okay if nothing has come up for you to write down yet. These are just guidelines we'll put in the chat as we move into a moment of music by Tony to allow us to just sit with this for a few more moments in another form of stillness and resonance. Tony, to you. Tony, I don't know how you do it, but you just captured everything. Um, thank you. Thank you for that. So, yes. Um, we'll now move into breakout rooms to discuss anything that may be coming up for you, anything that you may have written about or shared that you may be sitting with now. Feel free to introduce yourself, starting with your name and where you're coming from, and then anything you may have written down or that may be on your heart now. We'll turn to each other for about 12 minutes in small groups, and we'll see you back here to continue the conversation after that. Enjoy your time together. Welcoming everybody as they roll back in, as we all roll back in on Zoom, and welcome back to our YouTube live streamers. Glad to have everybody here with us. So we are just coming back in on all of our 4 Zoom channels, and of course, all of you on live stream, sharing with us on social media too. Thank you all for being here. Wonderful. As we just wait till everybody gets back in, you can start sharing anything in the chat and in the comments on live stream. Wonderful. So welcome back to everybody. Um, I hope that you all had a wonderful breakout session, and it would be wonderful for us to just be able to cross-pollinate and harvest some of what came up already. So you can share in your chat, and you can also press the participants button, which will open up another window, and there will be a little blue hand if you're on Zoom with us, and you can share when we call on you. So if you raise your little blue virtual hand, we'll call on people from across the 4 Zoom rooms and be able to hear audio visual, or you can share with us in the chat or in the comments on the live stream. Okay, Sarah Franklin.
Can't hear you. Sarah, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I beg your pardon. Sorry. We were looking at historic trauma and how that lands in the body, and how do we look at taking our personal and our political responsibilities and looking at different new ways of thinking so that we can actually find more integral ways of being and thinking. And in light of the question, which was, where might we be holding these collective agreements? I was particularly struck by the collective agreements that we make around the use and exploitation of animals. And how we talk about wanting a better world and a more environmentally friendly world, but yet each of our actions every single day is 1,000 decisions we need to make on what our personal commitments are around whether it's we shop at the supermarket, whether we drive a car or go by bike or public transport. And so I'm really called upon again, re-examining my own in my own life, where those unconscious decisions that I make that I can change to transform my being on the planet. And also I think in doing so, that's where you create the magic, and that's where you create again the hope, and also you create experiences like being able to share and participate with you guys. This is magical what we're doing here, and I'm very excited about where it's going. And I just feel incredibly privileged and want to really work very strongly and closely with with those left behind, or those voices that are not heard, who don't have the privilege of being in these rooms, and looking at how I think this online structure is brilliant, because more people will be able to join rather than flying somewhere, flying to Boston or flying to a conference, but actually participating online gives us much more opportunity. So I just want to say thank you for that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Sharing and just bringing that magic back in to all of us. We'll move to Dixon Delania.
Hi, I'm Back in 1999, my company, my partners, I released a bit of research called The Cultural Creatives, and it was about all the people in America at the time that were living through transformational values. And then 9/11 happened. And I really felt back then, we felt a real retraction back into survival and negative possibility and all of that for many years, followed by the 2008 financial crash. And it wasn't, and I'm saying this by way of appreciating this community and this conversation because it's a creative response. Rather than retracting, we are expanding space to see something else emerge. And I always used to say there was an emergent wisdom culture that was coming out in '99, and in our efforts with that research. And I see that now, even though there's been many years of it having in a way disappeared or gone underground, which is typical of those cultural creative types. But one of the things I want to say, another point I want to say is that based on the earlier caller, now I can't remember what her name was, but I am, like many other the friends in the networks I'm really inviting people to examine what it means to have personal integrity in the system. Part of the homework that I've been encouraging people to do is to re-examine their commitments. What is it that you want in life? What are you committed to? And really assessing whether you need those and whether you can revoke them. Like, do you really need a big car? I have young people in my life who are really examining, using that exercise to wonder whether they will have children or more children, and whether they want to revoke those and create new promises. So this whole, I think our personal integrity at an examination is really essential now. So thank you.
Thank you, Dixon. Thank you for reminding us of that, the importance of the personal integrity and the creative response. Next to Nicole, who's in our channel 3.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, this session has been quite hard for me because I came very much in contact with my personal shame. Thinking of how often in life I would look from, down on people, those people that are now doing all the jobs and all the work on the front line, and how often I was, looking on people, you're just cleaning the street, you're just doing this. And this is very hard for me. I feel really also my heart beating, and how often this arrogance separated me from these people, and instead of connecting with them and admiring them, and in connection with that, I was thinking also all the time of fences and frontiers and walls that we have built around our hearts, and fences around our houses, and all these practices that or things that show the separation between us. And the third thing that came up actually in the nice exchange with Mary and Mike now in the breakout room was that I was thinking about this imagination I had a few days ago. How will it be when one day it's finally allowed to hug each other again? How will it be? Will people start hugging each other on the street? Or that it's actually a nice picture that, and maybe we have to remind each other, hey, we can hug each other again. That would be nice. Yeah. And in that sense, I would give back to you. That's all what I have to share.
Sending a virtual hug to you as well, until we can hug again. Yes. So we have in channel 4, Giri.
Thank you. I wanted to share maybe a keyword coming from my personal reflection and also in this small room, which is a time of paradox. Because I saw felt at the macro level, there's a paradox between uncertainty on one side and hope at the same time. And at the social level, when talking about all the people that help us today and are in danger, there is at the same time some social distanciation and some divide from the economic and social point of view. But at the same time, at least in France, I feel there's some more subjective reconnection with all these people and recognition of their contribution to society. And so there's maybe an apparent distance, but at the same time, something that is being created to have a stronger connection between these different social bodies. And at the local and the interpersonal level, so I observed that in the street when we are walking for our daily walk, we put distance between the people, but at the same time we smile to each other. Some sort also some a different connection. So there's at the same time distanciation and mutual recognition of what is happening to us. So I wanted to share this paradox at all three levels that are interesting for me.
Thank you so much. And we know that we aren't going to be able to hear from everybody in this audiovisual way, but we are staying in communication online using hashtag Gaia Journey and on the GaiaJourney.org site. So thank you all so much for sharing. And we'll go back to Otto and Dana for closure of this conversation.
Thank you. I thought, Kiri, you really summarized it well. It's also, you know, we experience that in the streets, as you say, but we also experience it here, right? Kind of among the 1,000 or so of us, right, who are in this setting together now. We are physically distant, right? And yet we feel, as you said, like a different social connection. And then there's also this recognition, right? Kind of the recognition of what actually matters so much and how is that valued, right? By, for example, also our economic arrangements that really Dana opened the eye for us, kind of our collective blind spots in terms of structural violence and violence and how it shows up in our own everyday life and agreements that we enact. Dana, I wanted to, you know, give you the possibility for a little closing reflection before we continue with Olaf.
Unmute it, please.
Yeah. So I was looking through the chats and somebody talked about structural love as an antidote to structural violence. And I just love that. I don't know what it means, but I think it's worth thinking about how maybe as a start, we have a different set of agreements amongst ourselves that are about attentional love, attentional focus, compassion and empathy, just as, you know, holding ourselves in that as we walk around in the day. And yeah, visualizing our world as kind of a shimmering net of agreements and commitments and emotions, and what if we could strengthen that through just an intention to hold ourselves in love. It won't answer everything. Still a lot of poverty, and there's a lot of other things in the world to worry about, but just holding ourselves in that, as I believe that woman in the supermarket did today, I think is a really good place to start.
Wow. So structural violence and structural love, that's such an interesting term. And what you mentioned, attention, Dana, so that's certainly one, right? There is, and you and I discussed several times kind of this concept of attentional violence, right? So how that is often underneath And what is intentional violence? To not seeing another person truly who they really are, right? In there, not only as a result of their exterior circumstances, but in terms of their highest future possibility. Not being seen, right, as a form of violence. And that's really where, with this part of the Gaia journey, which is all about seeing each other in a deeper, kind of more comprehensive way in terms of kind of also our highest future possibilities. That's really what we try to practice with each other. So thank you for that. And with that, I want to move over to Berlin for Olaf to share a little bit what you have been capturing about our session, both our sessions we have been having this morning. Olaf?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I try to make sense of what is actually going on. So when Dana started talking, there was this explosion, as people said it before, and this dark place in the middle. And I was mainly listening and thinking, okay, well, how do I put this on the image? And then at a certain point, Dana said my heart cracked open, and I wrote it there because I felt this is a center point for the story. And I started to draw a little crack, and then the crack somehow needed to be stronger and wider. And suddenly, and then she was talking about the lifeline and how people were connected, and then suddenly it made sense. So for me, this is the first time I usually avoid to write love, because that gives an image which is never explaining what is actually meant. But for me, for the first time, I have the feeling this crack actually for me is love, because it's a crack through the dark, and it's somehow, yeah, connecting the human parts, which is for me somehow became the red parts, because it's blood, it's pain, but it's also passion, and that's the only answer to all of what we're facing here. That's for me.
Thank you so much, Olaf. That is very moving. And we're now going to take a little moment, maybe half a minute, for kind of allowing kind of that image to sink into our mind. We'll pay attention to the resonance that we experience. And then when I indicate that, you then can share your resonance by using in the chat, by using the sentence structure, I see, or I sense, or I feel. And then, after another couple of minutes or so, some of us, the hosts, will read out some of them, so some of what you have been sharing. So step one is just a little moment of letting everything sink in, a moment of stillness and individual seeing. Now, if you want, share what you're experiencing in the chat by using the sentence structure, I see, or I sense, or I feel, just in a single line.
I see tears. I see event horizon. I sense Gaia opening.
I see the stillness in the crack. I sense here there is a reason why this is happening. I see something emerging. I sense healing and light in the crack. I see that the crack is a lifeline.
I see a place for growth. I feel not yet reachable possibilities. I see the truth in paradox. I sense the crack. I sense the crack is where the light gets in.
Light emerging from the deep.
I see imagine together. I see a light warrior with its beautiful white wings with the sword of love. I see the wings of an eagle in the left side of the image.
I sense forgiveness, reclaiming life by our daily choice and decisions, reimagining and sharing coming from the emergent future.
Thank you all for sharing all of our resonance in our collective, our global community. And with that, we are at the close of our time together of our second inhale. And we now will just share a little bit about how we move this forward in our journey together. Many of us have talked about that physical distance is not the answer, that moving towards kind of an intentional love to each other and to ourselves. So for that, we've created a social solidarity circle process, which you can find on the GAIAjourney.org site. And you can connect with each other to just hold each other in this moment and be able to move through this experience together of uncertainty, of what's going on in our world, of the magic that Sarah brought in earlier. So there are lots of different ways to do it. We've given you a process that can be done weekly with a group of 5 people. We've also put a tool on the website for you to be able to find people and join a particular time together. So that's the social solidarity circles. You can also join together in a hub around a specific topic or region. So if you have something you want to work on together, you can find it in the hubs section on the GAIAjourney.org site. And then you can stay in touch with us on hashtag GaiaJourney. The key action to take, regardless of all of that, is to bring this level of awareness, this level of what has come up here in this heart space of turning towards and just realizing in every moment, in any part of your day, no matter where you are, just lifting up that heightened sense of awareness and just noting that for yourself, just noticing a little bit more. What are the agreements that I've been part of, consciously or unconsciously? What are the outcomes of my actions for myself or people or planet? So we look forward to hearing as you move into the next week, which is an exhale week, how it all goes for you and your communities. And we look forward to seeing you back here the following week in our next inhale. So we'll see you in the interwebs. You can unmute and say goodbye.